Welcome to the Rising Entrepreneurs Podcast, where we feature top founders and entrepreneurs and their journey. Now, let's get started with the show.
Dr. Jeremy Weiss here, founder of InspiredInsider.com, where I talk with inspirational entrepreneurs and leaders. I'm here with Eitan Chitayat of Natie, and it's NATIE.com. And Eitan, before I formally introduce you, I always like to point out other episodes people should check out. And I know there's resources I want you to share too. But I did an episode with Arit Oz, who you probably know, has run an agency for over 25 years in the B2B space. It helps companies with their global expansion. Amit Estreicher of Extras and Genie talks about how he lost all of his clients overnight. Eitan, not once, but twice, and how he bounced back. Nir Zavaro, who you know, he wrote the book, Fuck the Slides. He talks about storytelling. And Joe Levy, I found out, I was doing research on you at Natie. Joe Levy had on his company. They do everything in their power to combat mass shootings and violence with Alert, which is AI-Alert. And I see the video. You helped them. You helped Alert.
Yeah, right? we did the brand strategy and the story, and we came up with a name.
Love it. And they help detect weapons using surveillance cameras and AI, so authorities and people can be instantly alerted. And that and many, many more on InspiredInsider.com. And this episode is brought to you by Rise 25. And at Rise 25, we help businesses give to and connect to their Dream 100 relationships. And how do we do that? We actually help you run your podcast. We're an easy button for a company to launch and run a podcast. And we do the accountability, the strategy, and the full execution. So anytime we call ourselves the magic elves to work in the background and make it look easy for the host and the company so they can create great content and develop amazing relationships. You know, for me, the number one thing in my life is relationships. I'm always looking at ways to give to my best relationships. And I found no better way over the past decade to profile the people and companies I most admire and share with the world what they're working on. So if you've thought about podcasting, you should. If you have questions, go to rise25.com. And Eitan, it has a deeper meaning for me. Like I say there's a lot of amazing relationships, but it's really, I feel when you do this, you help leave a legacy. You help leave a legacy for the person talking and for yourself. And so I was inspired by my grandfather, who was a Holocaust survivor. And there was an interview that the Holocaust Foundation did with my grandfather, the Illinois Holocaust Foundation, and his legacy and story lives on because of that interview. So it has a deeper meaning for me as a person as well. And I'm excited to introduce Eitan Chitayat. And he's a brand builder, and he's founder of the international branding agency, Natie, as I mentioned, NATIE.com. He's lived in Hong Kong, London, Tel Aviv, New York, Boston. He's been a judge in advertising's finest competition, The One Show. He's learned from the best, also BBDO, Ogilvy and Mather NYC, Arnold Worldwide in Boston. His career, he's worked with clients like Apple, Target, AT&T, Google, many more. He created I'm That Jew, which is a viral video that's been viewed over 10 million times. He gave a TEDx talk about it, actually, and why he created it. He's also co-creator of She's That Woman, founded the 5% Club, and he's a founding chapter member of the EO Entrepreneurs Organization Israel. Eitan, thanks for joining me.
Thank you for having me. It's a real pleasure.
So I want to, you want to get to some amazing work you've done, but I want to start off with, you helped launch Gmail in Africa.
Yeah.
Talk about that.
When well, first of all, hi to everyone. I'm not at the speed of light like you are when you speak. I'm a little slower, and I'm also on very little sleep in general, so I apologize in advance. This is a welcome break for me to talk to you because I've been pretty busy. Gmail was a funny story. When I left New York after being a creative director at BBDO on digital for Target and AT&T, I came back to Israel. But in that year, I was kind of in between the two countries. I hadn't moved to Israel and I hadn't left New York. So for a year, I was kind of like back and forth. And in that time, I was brought on by the Google Creative Lab in New York City to help them with a lot of their work. And eventually, when I did move to Israel, I helped Google Israel and I helped Google in England. And I actually ended up helping Google Africa. They didn't have Gmail around, I'd say it was around 10, 11 years now ago. They didn't really have email. So they were dancing between, it was like mobile phones, SMSs and stuff. So they asked me to help launch Gmail in Africa. And I didn't really have an agency yet because I had, I was just starting Natty. And so my wife and I, along with the Google Africa team, me and my wife in our bedroom, in our little study, we came up with the launch campaign for Gmail Africa. We hired, of course, a couple of people that helped us. And that was it. It was incredible. Just, I pinch myself. I'm very, very lucky.
What do you do to launch Gmail on a continent? And by the way, there was a video out there from like 8 years ago or more of your first office. I don't know if you know, it's out on the internet, of a tour of your first office. When you first, I think maybe when you first started Natty, I don't know. But what do you do to launch Gmail on a continent? What was the plan?
Well, of course, we had to learn from Google what was needed and who the audience was. And the funny thing about Africa, of course, is it's a it's not a funny thing. They're a completely different culture, but also within Africa, you have different countries, and each of those countries have different cultures and different things that you kind of needed to get a very, very good brief, which they gave us, and down to the type of colors that we were able to use, the symbols that we were able to use, and to learn. I mean, a lot of it was learning about Africa and the mindset over there, which is the most important part of branding. The most important part of branding is to actually learn and listen. And then once we'd gotten all the information that we'd needed and gotten several, after several conversations, we started working hand in hand with the team. And we ended up delivering a lot of language and, of course, all the visual assets. And it was just amazing. It was an amazing experience because it's not every day you get to, first of all, work with the African continent. Secondly, it was amazing because it was something big. Thirdly, it was something that was meaningful. Like I know that we take email for granted, but you're actually, I don't know about you, but I've been using Gmail for like 20 years or since the day Gmail was launched, I've been a user. And I think it's a fantastic product.
You used to have to get an invite to it, I think.
Yeah. I got my whole family invites because I was one of the first on the list. But anyway, it was a fantastic campaign. And also the added bonus was, wow, we really got to do this. Like you sometimes have very big agencies that are doing that. And luckily, and it really was luck, Google believed in me enough and brought me on. So it was quite the story. And then we went on to work with Google on other things. We worked with YouTube and we worked with so we've worked with Google, we've worked with Gmail, we've worked with YouTube. So a lot of opportunities and great stuff.
I want to hear your thought process for branding, maybe under a specific example. Maybe let's just take Alert for a second, right? And someone comes to you. What's your process for thinking through? Because it's like there's so many different directions. There's so many places you can take something. What's your process look like?
Well, look, I have to tell you a little bit about Natty before I tell you about the process, because when you have a small agency and it's a successful agency, which, knock on wood, ours is, you have a choice. You can grow it or you can keep it small. And I made a decision, very conscious decision, to keep it small for two reasons. One is when my son was born, I decided I wanted to be a very present dad. And that was 10 years ago. And I didn't want to miss a minute. And so far, I'm staying true to that. The second thing is I like the work. I mean, I know what happens when you grow a company. You get further removed from the work. And we had a lot of successes where I felt that I wasn't able to bring it. You know what I mean? Like I wasn't able to bring what I know how to do, my craft, because I had to manage too many people. And so
Your
I think
position
that's
changes and your responsibilities and day-to-day changes.
Yeah, of course. You're managing
Yeah.
more teams, you're scaling. And what I love about branding, and I'll get back to your question, of course, what I love about branding is the craft. I love the craft of branding. I'm a purist. I don't believe in bells and whistles. I don't think that branding is creative. I think it's part creative, of course, but my process is to listen. It's to understand. When you're working with a company, we say no. I don't want to say we say no a lot, but we say it enough times because sometimes we don't believe in the product. So that's part of the process. Maybe I don't jive with the person. I don't feel, I wouldn't say integrity, but but you've got to feel the person as well. At least I need to. And those are the first two steps of my process. And then
It's
when you say,
client selection is the first step.
yeah, it is. It's what are
Yeah.
these guys doing? What are they all
Which is a
about?
great thing for any company, for any agency to think about, regardless if they want to
Yeah,
grow or scale.
yeah, but the great thing is when you're small, there's pros and cons. The pro is I don't want to work with you and I don't have to feed, 50 people. I don't have to pay 50 salaries. So I work with a very, very small team of people who are all very senior and we all need to love what we do. And that's the upside. And that really affects the process. So my process is to go deep, very, very deep. And it's the work is never pawned off to other people. I'm always there. And the first step is just listening and understanding this, maybe this industry that we don't know, as well as the client does, of course. We don't know the audience. We have to learn the audience. If it's a technology, whether it's med tech or agriculture or what have you, if it's a consumer brand, we need to learn about the product. It's a lot of learning. It's a lot of listening, and oftentimes I find that when you do um, listen, and you're listening to the senior team, to the CEO, to the founders, it's typically inspiring, and you get that before you start working with the potential client. If you're inspired by them, and the wonderful thing about living in Israel, even though we're going through some difficult times, as everyone knows, is the ideas that come out of this country and the people that just make these incredible things happen are just so inspiring. But the process is really to learn. I think that's the first step. And once you've learned and listened, then you go to work. And even then, it's not creative yet. Then it's strategic. And then once you've got the strategy down of what the brand should be and you guys are all on the same page, then the next part of the process is creativity, which is coming up with, moving from the what of the company and what they are and what you need to say to how you say it, how you show it. And that's the process. Learn and listen, apply strategic thinking, and then go to town with creative based on everything that you found and everything that you need to say and who you need to say it to.
Yeah, I find it, really instructive on how you think about this for any company can think about this for themselves. But when they're thinking of their message and their brand, talk about Ayler. And I found this company really inspiring. So I could see why you worked with them and you chose to work with them. Talk about what you did with Alert here.
It's Alert, because
Alert,
it's
yep.
AI Alert.
Hmm.
I had met Joe back in the day, and then he started working on on this company, on this new company. And I mean, who's not going to be inspired by what they're doing? A weapons detections technology that can save the lives of people. And it was very moving. And when he first told me about it, I told him, when you want to do your branding, then let's talk. And he did, and he made it happen. And it was challenging because it's a technology project, but at the same time, it's saving human lives. So how do you find the right balance between that? You can tug at heartstrings, but then you lose the technology. You can be a super technology focused company, but then you lose the whole angle of saving lives. So you had to find that balance of truth. And it's actually one of the stories that I'm most proud of, because the way that they positioned themselves at the beginning, and since our branding, they have evolved and they're still evolving. At the beginning, it was, we're going to save children at schools. Now they're expanding into other areas, like into retail as well. But the story that we delivered was all about, a school deserves to be a school. A school
Yeah.
shouldn't be a prison. And what their technology allows you to do is it allows you to detect very, very quickly if there's a threat. And when you can detect that threat, then the schools can be locked down immediately. Security can come in very quickly. And also, police forces and security forces from outside can get in because everything's on camera with alert. So they know, one of the reasons that sometimes you have these big massacres is because even though the police are there, they can't go in because they don't know what these guys have got. So that whole story um, provides a lot of hope, and the hope that your kids can be safer. And who are you speaking to? Are you speaking to kids and parents? No, you're speaking to the school system, and at this stage, you're speaking to companies. So we had to find the language also, which is based on their truth. And when we met with the team, I mean, these guys are, so many of them are parents. It's very personal. And as a dad and as a father of two, a lot of that heart and soul goes into the story. And I never actually got to deliver their visual identity. We did the brand strategy and the story and the naming, but I'm still in touch with Joe, and we help out here and there. It's an amazing company. I think he's doing wonderful things.
Totally.
Very, very important things, unfortunately so.
Yeah, exactly. What's interesting when I look through these, and we're going to talk about a few others and how you think about branding and what you did with the companies is, um, we have, Isra Aid, we have, a lot of
Yeah.
really interesting companies, but like, I don't know why the Sweet Victory one sticks out to me.
Oh, it's one of my favorite. It's one of my
It just
favorites.
seems like out of the norm when I see your work. So tell me about Sweet Victory.
The Sweet Victory was one of my favorite projects in the last 5 years, and I'll tell you why. Two women approached me. I've told this story before, but for your viewers, two women approached me, entrepreneurs, wonderful women, and they got to me through someone else, and they had a product, and it's a chewing gum. It's a very simple chewing gum, and the idea is that you chew this gum. Well, put it this way, if you're watching your weight or if you're trying to cut down on sugar, it's very difficult to put down that dessert, not to pick up that dessert at the end of the meal. So what you do is with their product is you take this little gum at the end of your meal and you chew it. You chew it for around 2 minutes and it tastes like mint gum, tastes great. And then you put it out. And then if you take a bite of that chocolate cake or that tiramisu or that vanilla ice cream, it tastes like shit.
Really?
I mean, it tastes
it changes the taste.
It tastes like sand. It tastes awful.
Wow.
And because what it does is it basically neutralizes the sugar receptors on your tongue for a couple of hours. And it's a genius product.
Wow.
So what did they call it? They called it Genie, except they're Israeli. And bless them, it was spelled Gyni, which an English or an American person would say Giny. And Giny sounds like vagina. And when they came to me, they said, "We've heard you great and we need visual identity." And the visual identity that they had was, as they, it just wasn't right. It was very, it was almost, it was white and green and minty, and it looked like something that you would buy at a health store. And I told them, "I'm sorry, but you can't call it shiny, even though you're trying to say it's magical."
Good thing you said something, right?
Well, yeah, but they didn't really want to change it. And I said, "I can't do it unless you change it." And to their credit, and this is why I like them so much, because it takes courage. They said, eventually they just turned around. They said, "You know what? We're gonna go with what you're saying." And then when we started the project, the brand strategy in short was, where we netted out was that sugar is the enemy. We all love sugar, but we all know that sugar is bad for you. And when you're trying to defeat an enemy, you need an ally and you need to be victorious. And that was the story, and out of that came the name, which was Sweet Victory. And out of that came the logo, which at the time they've evolved it because this was quite a few years ago and they've evolved the brand. But at the time, instead of anemic and pastelly white and green, it was very bold, very fun. And if anyone goes to natty.com and looks at the Sweet Victory branding that we did,
Yeah.
it
And
was
by
the
the
polo.
way, I just want to point out real quick, Eitan, if people are listening, there is a video version of this, and we are actually looking at the Natty website, and you can see some of the work that they're doing. But yeah, keep going.
Yeah. So, I mean, like, it was, sugar cravings come, and if you want to defeat them, it's really hard to do it on your own, and you need an ally. You need someone that will help you win. And so what's interesting about that project is it worked the way it should. You had people that started that were believers, that they realized, to their own credit, that they didn't have what they needed. And it started with thinking. And I work with a guy, Dan, who's an amazing strategist. I've worked with him for 15 years amongst one or two other strategists that I work with. And together we cracked this strategy. And then out of that came the name. And then out of that came the story. And then out of that came the logo. And it's when you're building a brand, the visual identity should answer the logo. The logo should answer the name. The name should answer the story. The story should answer the strategy. And the strategy should answer exactly what that product does. And what people who don't understand when it comes to branding, a lot of people don't understand, is that that's the way it should be. And you don't want to take shortcuts. You don't want bells and whistles for the sake of bells and whistles. You don't want something to look or sound sexy if there's not an inherent truth to it. So that's what I really loved about that project. And what I love even more is that these two women are just so great. I mean, they're just so hungry and so driven, and I'm so proud of them. And they're going on, and they're successful, and they're expanding their business. And I'm just really proud of them, as people. So
How do you buy it? Where do you get it? Where can you get
at
it?
this at this stage, I don't know, but I can find out,
Yeah.
and I'll let you know.
Well,
I
I'm looking on
haven't.
here. We should I mean, I don't know if you've heard of the, I'm sure you have. People were talking about the something they buy to eat, and then they eat a lemon and it tastes, it's like almost the opposite, right? It like altered your sour receptors, whatever, to make it taste really sweet. This is like the exact opposite of that in a sense,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
this is really cool. I've never heard of this before.
Yeah, and it's herbs. I think it's Jimena. That's
It's like an
it's
herb
a
that,
natural
yeah.
ingredient. Yeah.
Oh wow.
But I know that they sell it in Israel, and they sell it under a different name because what we did was for the international brand.
Okay.
But I know that it's in Asia. I think that you can get it in the States already, but I'll find out and I'll let you know. I
Yeah, I'll
mean,
have to look on Amazon to see if it's
lately,
not on there.
no one's really been talking about stuff like that here lately, but
Yeah,
I will get
ex
back to you about it.
exactly. You know, there's bigger fish to fry than dessert. But like, listen, this is really interesting, and we'll have to I'll have to look on Amazon to see if people can get it, because I mean, this is a great solution for, I mean, I had this with my one of my children last night. Like, I want dessert. Well, we're not having dessert. You could, this thing about
Oh,
dessert every night.
the
Yeah, for
kids love it.
kids.
No, the kids love it, and
Yeah.
I had it, and when the kids would come over and they with their friends, it was like a game. Can we try the Sweet Victory, and just to see what things taste like?
Totally.
And I think it is for kids as well. I'm sorry to say it, but in America, with obesity and kids just eating lots of crap and junk, I think much more than other places over there.
Yeah.
It's good, and it's not harmful. It's got no kind of like bad ingredients in it. It's a great
Well, if it's
product.
not on Amazon yet, I've had a bunch of Amazon experts. We're gonna have to get this worldwide.
I will hook you up if
All
need
right.
be. Don't worry about
Awesome.
it.
I love it. Back to, you know, kind of in the same vein as you not being able to sleep for the past 30 days and just running like a wild man. Um, we'll get to that. But the Jewish Agency for Israel.
Mm,
Um,
wonderful.
talk about what you did there in a little bit for people that don't know the organization.
Sure. The Jewish Agency for Israel has been around for 70 years. And they are all over the world, and they help Jewish communities with all sorts of things. And when you looked around 5 years ago at their story, they didn't really have one. And you looked at their brand, and it looked kind of stuck in the 80s. and they needed help. They needed to be relevant again. I think not that they weren't relevant, but they're, sometimes, I don't know if this is on camera, right?
Yep.
Okay, so here's the brand, the way that it looks, but here's what the company is doing. And so what you need to do is you need to do that.
Right.
And so it's an incredible organization, and they didn't look like it, and when you spoke to them about, when you speak to people about what the agency does, people were saying things that they were known for 30 years ago. So we went through a very, very, like the Jewish agency, like, for example, Sweet Victory, it's like when we had the strategic process, we spoke to a few people. It's a small company. But when we worked with the Jewish Agency for Israel, I think that we spoke to around 50 people. There were 3 strategists on board. And we spoke to a lot of people. We worked very closely with the senior team. I worked directly with Natan Sharansky, who's a hero of mine, and just forever an honor. And Lara Bashkoft, who was the chief marketing officer at the time. And we had to really understand everything it is that they do. And one of the most interesting things I think about that process was when we would try and distill what it is that they actually do, it was very difficult for them to say. And I remember, for me, one of the highlights was working with Natan Sharansky and sitting in his office with everybody. And when I asked him, "What is it that you do?" he kept saying things that were true, but felt like, I don't know, like not canned responses, but just not, like, almost like corporate responses to me in the room. And so I pressed him, and he started getting frustrated with me. Now, it's not easy to challenge someone like Natan Sharansky, who, by the way, came to my school in JFS when I was a 15-year-old in London, and spoke at my school as, the hero of the Jewish people that escaped, Russia. And here I was challenging him. And at some stage, he said in frustration, in his wonderful accent, he said something to the extent of, "Look, there are Jews everywhere, and we hold everyone together. We bring them together." And that became the tagline: "Every one of us together." You know, and that's something that, of course, I wasn't the only one to. We worked with Laura and with Dan and with Michal and myself, and there's another Michal that worked on it as well. But once we had that, we then were able to kind of wrap this beautiful story in a manifesto, which we wrote. And then we worked on the visual identity, and the visual identity, as you can see, because you're scrolling right now, it's, if you see the original work, there's a tapestry. There's a tapestry of a graphic tapestry like that. And when you look at it, it's because each part of the tapestry is an individual, but it's a woven tapestry. It's the fabric of the Jewish people woven together, and it's held together. So again, the Jewish Agency for Israel was an evolution of a brand. The logo existed. I mean, we made tiny adjustments to it, but it was really about the strategy and what is it that we need to say to the world about who we are. And then it was the delivery of the story that had to pack all of the history and all of the programs and everything that they are all about into that story. And then to deliver a graphic language that could hold it all together. And then to deliver multiple, we did conference materials, we did, their annual report, we did all of their program materials, and we worked with them for around 2 years. And what I'm especially proud of is that, because you're looking at the site right now, if you look at the work that we did 5 years ago, this organization has done a remarkable job of staying absolutely on brand. And by the way, you're on the site now. This is the first time I've seen the site. And I don't know if this is the homepage. Is that the homepage?
This is the homepage is right here.
Right. So
Yeah.
up until the war, it says now Israel is at war and we need your immediate support.
Mm-hmm.
Up until there, it was every one of us together. And I'm glad that they've changed it to Israel is at war right now. But for 5 years, that was the headline. and that is the story. So that took the brand strategy story process took around 6 months because you had to talk to so many people in so many different countries on the ground and the senior leadership. Um, it was a phenomenal project. I mean, it was exhausting and difficult because there's also a desire to do exceptional work always, but like especially with them because they're the Jewish agency for Israel. They represent the Jewish people around the world. And to me, as a Jewish, as a proud Jew and as a proud Israeli, it was an honor. You know, I'm very proud of them also for like maintaining the work that we did. You know, because sometimes clients just fuck it up. You know, you finish the branding and 2 months later you look at their work and you're like, what the fuck are you guys doing? And you know, but they didn't. They're great. They're doing good work.
I want to talk about I'm That Jew for a second, but I also want to share Eitan. People want to follow Eitan, and you could first of all check out their work at Natie.com. You could see here on the page, but also check out what he's doing on LinkedIn as well. Here's his handle here. You can see it, and we'll put it in the notes as well. But you could see here, and there's a lot of thought that went into this piece,
Yeah.
which is your header of your LinkedIn. I heard behind the scenes, actually, some of the way you thought through this header. And if you want to just talk about that for a second. And
Sure. Well, I changed my banner when the war started. And you know, it was a Lego banner before. Um, it was a Natty banner which we designed with some Lego, which was kind of fun. But seeing what's unfolding in with Israel right now is beyond Israel, and I think it's very easy to critique Israel, and a lot of people do, and rightly so, like any other country. But there's a bit of a double standard that goes on when critiquing Israel because, you know, there are Jewish people being attacked all around the world because of what Israel is doing. So why do you attack a Jewish couple coming out of a movie theater if there's a war in Israel? They're Jewish. It doesn't have anything to do with Israel. So I know that if you are going to advocate right now for something, sure, I believe that you should advocate for Israel because I believe in our fight against Islamic Jihad. But a lot of people are misinformed, and there's a lot of propaganda out there. And as soon as you say the word Israel, it's
the
a
cherished
problem.
word.
Yeah, it's a problem, and it's not just Israel. It's you know, Israel is the Jewish nation, and I think that when you see global anti-Semitism and you see Jews being attacked all around the world, both with inflammatory and violent rhetoric and also physical violence, then is that acceptable? Or do you stand with the Jewish people? And I think it's a truth. I don't think it's a gimmick. I do think that we have, you know, 2 million Arabs in our wonderful country with full equal rights. There is no genocide. There is no apartheid. And also, I believe that you know, you have other religions living here as well. But it is the Jewish country. It is the one Jewish state in the world. So when you stand with the Jewish people, you should stand with Israel as well. And it doesn't mean that you can't criticize Israel. You can, but this is about anti-Semitism. And so, because that's what Hamas is, they're anti-Semitic. They want to kill not only every Israeli, they want to kill every Jew in the world. And after that, believe me, every Westerner that doesn't convert to their radical fanaticism, you know. So I stand with the Jewish people is, I think, about as bulletproof a message that you could put out right now because nothing's bulletproof. You know, we're always going to be faulted with something as Jewish people. But do you stand with us in our fight for humanity, despite the awful things that we're all seeing with children being killed and bombings? Um, you can still stand with the Jewish people, and that's why I put that there. And that was adopted, as you know, by Entrepreneurs Organization, not the organization itself, but like a team of people within that believe that too. And other groups as well have started to adopt it, which is fine by me. Like,
Yeah.
please use it.
You said, there's a lot of misinformation. What misinformation have you seen out there? And because you obviously live in Israel, right? And
Yep.
there's misinformation all over the world. So talk a little about some of the misinformation you've seen.
Well, we can start with the big three. One is genocide. Okay, I mean, just today on LinkedIn, in response to a film that I released called Star of One, um, someone wrote, how can you speak for the Jewish people? You have an evil government, and you're creating a genocide. And you really have to understand what genocide is, I think, to be able to use it. But that's one of the myths: genocide. Genocide means that you're actively killing off a population. You're And we're not doing that. If you look at where Israel was in around 1948, there were around 150,000 Arabs that lived on the land after the War of Independence, which is a whole conversation. But that's how many were living in Israel proper. And today there are over 2 million. That's not a genocide, you know? And no one is packing people off into trucks and shooting them in the back of the head and putting them in ditches. No one is doing that. That doesn't exist. Sure, there have been incidents, and literally incidents of awful, heinous acts by, if we think about Baruch Goldstein, who went into a mosque around 20 years ago and shot up the mosque and killed 26 people. That happened. And that is atrocious. And that to me is an act of genocide. But I can count on one hand things like that have happened. But if you look at Palestinian terror, not Palestinians, but Palestinian terror, I don't believe that that's the case at all. So I don't think that there's a genocide here. There isn't a genocide here. Just people are uneducated. The other thing is apartheid. Um, I can tell you that today I walked out of my home and I walked past my house, and there's a big building, an 8-story building that is being built, and there's around 30 Arabs working there. And then I went to the bus, and I got in the bus, and it was an Arab bus driver. And then later, I went to the eye doctor, and the pharmacist was an Arab. And when I was in hospital around 3 years ago, and I had I was hospitalized for 10 days because of something with my eyes. Um, I had 7 doctors, and 4 of my doctors were Arab Israelis. We had a government before the Netanyahu government up to a year ago that was headed by Naftali Bennett, as you remember, where we had an Arab party as a part of the government. That's not apartheid. There is there's a challenge that we have with the land that needs to be solved. And there is definitely a kind of a segregation, but context is important. And when you say there's an apartheid and you're ruling over a people, I don't think anyone here really wants to rule over people. Why? Because our soldiers are going to fight and are put in harm's way, and it hurts our economy. And honestly, it's a pain in the ass. The reason why there's a wall separating in many areas the West Bank and Israel is because of suicide bombers around 20 years ago when I was living here. I walk by at least once or twice a week Dizengoff Center in Tel Aviv, where a guy in Purim blew himself up and took around 15 people with him, with his head lying on the ATM machine after he blew up. I mean, people were doing this for a number of years, and eventually the Israeli government said, enough, we're going to build a wall and keep these people out. Not the Palestinians, but the terrorists. But we're blamed for it. And I'm not saying we're blameless in the overarching conflict. I think that we have a lot to answer for. But ultimately, people don't know those things. People don't know why there's a separation. But if you come to Israel proper, you know, we live with Arabs here, just like any other country you have lots of different cultures. But if you go into the West Bank, and the country that we would have wanted to have been established there a long time ago, alongside us, not instead of us, as a lot of Palestinians want, and that's a conversation. But alongside us, then the country that they're going for would mandate that no Jews are allowed to live there. When you have Arabs living here, so I think that people are lazy. And I think that most people have always been lazy. But in this day and age with TikTok and little tweets, when I wanted to learn about the Second World War, I didn't go to a Wikipedia page. I read a fucking book called The Rise and Fall of the Third Reich by William L. Shirer, which is around 1,000+ pages. And I think that, we've gotten lazy. And, on my LinkedIn, going back to the story, he just threw out shit that he heard: genocide, apartheid, buzzwords. And I think that our enemies, meaning Hamas and BDS, boycott, divest, and sanction, have done a phenomenal job in their propaganda. And they've taken, the pages from Goebbels' handbook, in Nazi Germany. And I think that the truth will win in the end. So it's just how many people are going to die before that happens, and how many people around the world are going to understand who's in the right here and who's in the wrong. It doesn't mean that those who are in the right are perfect. I'm the first one to say that we're not. But that's kind of my overarching thoughts on the issue.
So Eitan, you said the big three: genocide, apartheid. What was the third one?
I think generational hatred. I think that the Palestinians, the nationhood of the Palestinians is a very big issue, because it's either next to us, side by side with us in peace, or instead of us. And I think that the Palestinian people are fueled by hatred, by their leaders, and by the leaders of the world. I think the world has done a piss poor job of just collectively, including the UN, of actually, wow, how do I say this? It's because it's politically charged, and I don't want to get too political, but I think that when you let hatred just live and continue, then you're not doing anyone any favors. And the worst people, the people who are suffering the most, are those who are being taught that hatred. And I think that the third thing is the generational hatred, that for over 75 years, the Palestinians have been saying that their land was stolen. And it's not a popular thing to say if you're not, an Israel supporter. But if you really look at the facts, and if you really do your research, there has never been a land that was called Palestine for the Palestinians. It was Palestine came as a punishment by the Greeks. I believe the Greeks or the Romans, hundreds and hundreds of years ago, to punish the Jews for their revolution, their revolt against them. And so they named the land Palestine. Why? Because Palestine represented Philistine. And the Philistines were, as you remember, David and Goliath. David slew Goliath, and Goliath was a Philistine. So the Arabs that continued living there, and there were Arabs on the land, absolutely, their land wasn't stolen. It was not anyone's land. It was the British mandate. And then the UN determined that they were going to split the land between the Arabs on that land and the Jews on that land. And the Jews accepted the split, and the Arabs did not. And then the very next day, as you know, there was a war where all of these countries around us, tiny little Israel, I think 6 armies, or was it 7, came to war against Israel. And a lot of those Arabs on those lands were, and this is disputable, either fled or were forced out. The Palestinians today say that they were forced out. The Israelis say that they fled. But honestly, the fact is that a lot of those Arabs left during a war, and no one expected Israel to win. And we won. And then we increased our territory, and the Palestinians became refugees. And they've been suffering ever since. Now, if I was a Palestinian, and by the way, the whole Palestinian thing came about with Yasser Arafat because he kind of invented, not, he didn't invent Arabs living on the land. Arabs absolutely lived on the land. But this notion of Palestine was a PR stunt because there has never been a state called Palestine. There's never been a prime minister. There's never been a president. There's never been borders, Arab borders. It was never, ever. And that's a lie. That's deception. But getting back to the hate thing, when you teach that lie to a 2-year-old and a 3-year-old, or in the West Bank or in Gaza, when you open school books and textbooks, and the textbook has a map, and in the map, you don't see Israel, you see the state of Israel, but the word Palestine, then that's lying, but that's creating hatred. And who let the hatred continue? The Arab countries did. The UN did. The Palestinian leadership did. And the world did. And that everything that I'm saying doesn't mean that I don't want there to be a Palestinian state living side by side in peace with us. I do. But I want people to understand the facts and to understand that you can invest all of your time and energy in hatred and negativity and talking, or and victimizing, or you can do what the Jewish people did, coming out of something which I believe was infinitely worse, which is build and create and thrive and stop saying that you can't when you can and you could have many times. And that's, again, not to say that I don't sympathize with the Palestinian plight. I do. But Israel is not going away. Israel is not going to disappear. And Israel will not accept anything other than a Jewish state living here. We will not be replaced, because what that actually means, from the river to the sea, as you know, maybe your listeners don't, but Israel is around an hour from east to west. That's the border. And from north to south, maybe around 8 hours drive. The river on the east side, on the Jordan side, it's a river, the Jordan River, that's from the river. And to the sea is the Mediterranean Sea. So from the river to the sea, Palestine will be free. Free of what? Free of who? Free of me? Free of my family? That's hatred. And you ask a Palestinian, what do you actually want? And if you stay with the conversation long enough, they'll say Israel. So unless that changes, and I'm not saying every Palestinian feels that way, unless that changes, that hatred, that narrative of hatred continues. So that's the hatred which is passed on from generation to generation until a leader who is able to stand up and say, no, we have to start with something. We have to start building. We have to teach and give our people hope and produce and create, and not what Hamas produces and creates. And that's happening more in the West Bank, the West Bank of Jordan, or Judea and Samaria, or whatever you want to call it. But it's very difficult to see the world not understanding that. The world is so ignorant and buying into easy lies and sound bites. But like I said, a good brand, which is built on a foundation of truth, will win in the end. And I think our truth has been around for almost 6,000 years. The Christian world reads about it in their Bible, and the Muslim world, the descendants of. Yeah, so I'm saying that the truth is not the truth of the last 75 years. The truth is the truth of the last 6,000 years, and I'm hoping that wins, so that we can live in peace side by side. And I'll shut up now.
No, I'm pulling up, the ultimate definitive resource, right? Which is Walmart.com. No, but and you can buy, here's the map. And so you're saying when people
I'm right there.
chanting,
I'm that red dot. I'm that red
from
dot.
the
Tel
river
Aviv.
to the sea, you're right here. Yeah.
I'm right there. Yeah.
From the river to the sea.
Yeah. You see that? Yeah. That red dot is the sea, and just right of the West Bank is the Jordan River. And so when they say from the river to the sea, we'll be free, if that isn't a call to genocide after October 7th, and you saw what happened then, I don't know what is. And I don't think that all of these people chanting in the streets want a genocide. I just don't think most of them really know what the fuck they're talking about.
Yeah.
Heavy shit, man.
Yeah, it's crazy times, and I wanted to talk about this for a second. We're
Sure.
on I'm That Jew, I am that Jew.com. And one part about this is, you talk about all this stuff openly, but before you put this out, you weren't sure you were going to put it out. You talked to your family about maybe not putting it out. Talk about the decision to even put this out there.
Sure. First of all, it's I'm that Jew, not I am that Jew.com.
I know,
but
I'm just saying that's the domain name. Yeah.
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 A friend of mine was living in France, and at the time of the Charlie Hebdo massacres. And if you remember the Charlie Hebdo massacre, there's also a kosher supermarket that was targeted, and 4 Jewish people were killed just for being Jewish. And I spoke to a friend of mine who was living in France, who had lived in Israel before. She's Jewish, and I was like, "Well, how is it going?" Because it was, I don't know if people remember, it was just horrific what was going on over there. And she said, "Look, I don't tell anyone I'm Jewish. When I meet people, I'm too scared. I don't tell them that I've ever been to Israel." And I said to myself, how can it be, after speaking with her, how can it be that in at the time 2015 or 2014, whenever it was, how can someone feel that way? And so I sat down and I wrote I'm That Jew, and it was a blog post, and it kind of went viral. It got like some traction, and then it's kind of a poem. And I thought, well, I think I would like to turn it into a piece, and then I turned it into a piece, and the piece was ready, and then I sat on it for a while, didn't release it. And then there was in 2015, some awful knife attacks where terrorists coming out of the West Bank and Gaza were just coming up to Israeli moviegoers, supermarket shoppers, people walking in the park, and running up to them and stabbing them in the back. Like it was an epidemic that lasted for around a month. And when that started happening, I realized, they're being attacked because they're Jewish. And I want to put this out there. The question was how, and that was your question. How do you? Because it really is a how. I could put it out anonymously. I could put it out on YouTube. I could put it out as some type of something on a messaging platform, and it could spread. But what I really wanted to do was I wanted to stand up and show the world that I'm not afraid. And so I did it on Facebook, because on Facebook, of course, it goes with your name. And I think more important than the film itself, for me, it was me saying, my name is Eitan Chitayat and I'm that Jew. That statement. And it was a family decision. I sat down with my wife and I said, babe, if I do, because at the time, no one was doing this. It was very difficult to, in social media world of around 10 years ago, Jewish people were more kind of like, I'm not going to go there. I don't want that type of heat. And I wanted to speak for them, and I wanted to speak for my friend in France. And I just thought, if I do this, maybe other people will do this. And so, but I also knew that it would come with death threats and hate mail and all of that stuff. But true to my nature, I said, fuck it. My wife said, go for it. And I did it. And it just took off. It just blew up. And it's been seen on different platforms around 15 million times now. And it's still circulating, because I think what it is and what's annoying about anti-Semitism and being Jewish is that this subject is always there, I think people like to put people in boxes. They like to put black people in boxes, Asian people in boxes, and they like to put Jewish people in boxes. And this statement was really like, you can't fucking put me in a box, because I'm so many things. And that's kind of what I said. That's what I said when I posted it. We are so diverse. We are white and we are black and we are brown and we speak billions of languages, and we've been influential in science and in art and in technology and in medicine and in the humanities. And we have been around for such a long time, and we've gone through disasters and catastrophes and holocausts, and we are still standing. And fuck you if you think that you can define me. I define me. I tell you who I am. This is my statement. I'm that Jew. And I think that that resonated with a lot of people, and that's why it spread, and that's why I think it's still spreading. But it felt good. It felt good to put it out there, and I think it feels good for people when they see it, as well. I still get a lot of love for that, and I'm so proud to have, and fortunate, I feel, to have contributed something to help people understand us a little bit more and to give Jewish people strength when they need it. And I think that that's when they watch this, to remember who you are and to not be scared to say it loud and proud, warts and all, because we're not perfect. That's something I say in the piece too. We're not perfect, but I think we're okay. I think we're more than okay for the most part.
Eitan, thank you for sharing that. Last question is just a few resources that you can share, that people you follow, that you love, and you want to share. I know one person we were talking about before we hit record, Hillel Fold, him and maybe other people that you follow and encourage other people to check out.
Sure. Yeah, we were talking about Hillel because he just shared my film. I mean, I know Hillel, and he's a tech guy. I think he's built an incredible brand. I mean, when it comes to our narratives, they're different. But I respect the work that he's doing in his Israel advocacy in his own way. I don't agree with all of it, but I think that he's doing a really good job, and he's done some terrific work lately in advocating for the Israeli people and the Jewish people. Like I said, I don't agree with everything that he says, but in a situation that we're in right now, I think all of us are putting our small differences aside, and we're on the same page about a lot of things. So he's someone that I am that I would suggest that people follow to get. I wouldn't say that he's objective, but he's smart and he's right many times. So I would suggest that people follow him. I really like Emily Schrader. Emily Schrader is doing phenomenal work in bringing the facts to the world. There's another guy, and I hope I don't get his name wrong, Yosef Haddad. And he is, can we just check that? Make sure I didn't get it wrong.
Yeah.
I follow him all the time. He's an Israeli Arab. He served in the armed forces, and he's Arab. And he is standing up for Israel, standing up for the values of the Jewish nation. And he's very, very, very objective. Right. Yeah, Yosef Haddad, absolutely. Another person that I really love is Eve Barlow. Eve Barlow has a Substack. You can follow her on Twitter. She is, she's not a friend, but she's a mate. I've interviewed her on my podcast, which you can direct people to maybe later. And she got a lot of heat a few years ago. She's blunt. She's an incredible writer, and she is a force of nature. Noah Tishby, I think, is a lioness, and I think she's doing phenomenal work. And also, there's someone else that I like, and her name is Shoshana. And I'm going to just make sure that I don't get her name wrong, her full name, because she's a mate as well. And her name is Shoshana Jaskal, Keats Jaskal. And I love her as well. And Lee Kern, by the way, Lee Kern is this English dude who's funny as shit. And he's fighting the good fight from England. These are all.
How do you spell it?
Lee, Lee. Mm-hmm. Kern, Kearn. And there are all sorts of other people. I mean, there are some wonderful people doing phenomenal work. And I think that it's these people that, we put ourselves in the line of fire. Yes, that's him.
Yeah, okay.
And you can find him on Instagram. He's great. So I think these people, what we're trying to do is we're really putting ourselves on the front line as people with our careers, with our reputations. We're not organizations, and I think we're proud to do it. Just like you've seen the Israeli people and the Jewish people galvanize and become one. I think that a lot of these quote unquote influencers, I don't like the word I'm an accidental influencer. I don't think I'm an influencer really. I think these people are. But it's so important right now to speak up, not just Jewish people. It's so important that that people around the world stand up, because there is a right here and there is a wrong. I mean, I do believe that all the people that I just mentioned are good people with their hearts in the right place, and they like me accept criticism of the state of Israel and can accept a lot of things that need to be done on our side to make things better. But we're fighting lies, and we're fighting a war of propaganda, which is what Nazi Germany's did in Germany, but this is on a global scale. And I highly recommend that you follow these people, these good people, these soldiers, and many more like them. And give them your strength, give them your support, listen to them. And I would suggest to anyone who is a little ambivalent, or sitting on the fences, don't make a choice. Find out what Hamas is all about and what they're preaching, not what the mobs are saying. Free Palestine. It's a great slogan, but do some digging, and then find out what these people are saying. Find out what the Israeli government, the unified Israeli government, not Netanyahu. I'm not a Netanyahu fan. I've never voted for him in my life. But the coalition government, what the state of Israel is all about, everything that I told you about, no apartheid and there's no genocide and none of that shit. I would advise that people do the work and follow these people as well.
Eitan, I'm the first one to thank you. Thanks for sharing your journey, your story. Everyone check Eitan out on LinkedIn. You could check him out at natie.com. You could check him out on iamthatjew.com and many more. And Eitan, thank you so much.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. And stay safe out there.
Thanks for listening to the Rising Entrepreneurs Podcast. This episode is powered by Rise 25. Please subscribe and check out future episodes.